Thank you for joining us for MOCs in Motion with Joe Dorsey, episode 3.
Hello.
And here he is, Joe.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? I am here with my co-host, David.
How you guys doing?
And I think we're going to noodle around today, kind of build a few little mechanisms. We'll kind of show how they work, and hopefully there'll be something that people can incorporate into their builds as they're going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Just so some difference in how some things collaborate with one another.
Yeah, so we spent our first episode, we talked about the different elements. And then last week, what did we do last week? We showed them a few different gear mechanisms, how they could add some rigidity to their builds by incorporating the Technic bricks along with the beams and the lift arms. So that way everything's held together nice and tight. Because when they're doing their MOCs, they're probably going to be using a lot more Lego system than Technic, but the Technic's what gives them the motion. So I thought we would kind of spend a little bit of time, build a few simple mechanisms, show you how to do a simple steering type mechanism, something really easy to do with that. And then we'll incorporate a worm gear, and we'll kind of show you how to get some linear motion. So you need something to be lifted up off of the ground, or you want something to change positions within your build. And then we've been showing off these transmissions quite a bit, so I thought it'd be really fun to show everybody how to build a really simple one with the minimum amount of parts you need to be able to do that.
Yeah,
so
I think they'll like that.
Yeah, so that'll be pretty cool. So that'll give us a few different things to do. So let's start off with a really simple steering mechanism. Say you're building a car or something like that, and you want to have some movement in the front axles. So we're not going to make it super complex. I mean, you could get really complex. We have a few different MOCs and versions over here that are suspended. This one is a live axle here, or a solid axle that's got steering built into it and incorporated into it. Am I in a good spot for the camera? Perfect. All right. So these are a little bit more advanced, and we can talk some about those over time. But I want to show you just something really simple that you guys can use in your builds if you want to get some movement out of your front wheels on a car that you might be building. So to do that, a few pieces that I would recommend, they're going to make it as simple as possible, are these little perpendicular pin and beam combos. If you have 2 of those, you can pretty much make any type of steering system that you might want to. All right, so we're going to take a couple of those. We're going to take a couple of beams. Whatever length you're going to be needing for your build is fine. You're going to need 3 at least in the same size. So we got 3 of them there that are in the same length. And then we're going to incorporate all that together. So just to get the simple outline, do I have some wheels? Yeah, we got a couple wheels out here. Let's get a couple of these guys here. I really like using these axles that have the stoppers on the ends. This makes it a little bit easier. Stuff can't fly through, and you use less parts this way, because the alternative to that is to use some bushings. So you would have to hold everything together with a half bush or a full bushing on the ends of those axles. And that they're a little bit strong. They're plenty strong for most applications, but just having the physical piece in the way makes it a lot easier. So if you wanted to do a super simple steering mechanism, take these perpendicular pin and beams, stick those on the ends. Then we're going to feed through our axle, and we're going to put those on the front side. Give me a couple of wheels, David. We'll just throw a couple wheels on there to show what we're going for here. So
need another bushing?
No, I think everything will hold itself together here on this simple little mock-up here. We're going to do that one on that side and that one on that side. So already we've got kind of the beginnings of what we're going for a steering mechanism. We're going to sandwich everything together here really quick, holding that down. So you're going to end up with something that looks like this. You want to make sure you don't have a lot of friction here. So if you wanted to, definitely could use these in here. Say you have a wheel that's not flush, like these wheels here have a recess on one side and then flush on the other side. So if you want to do that, you could do that. Add that in there, push everything apart a little bit, and figure out what I'm doing here. There we go. Oh, still a little too. Perfect. Put another one
on the other side
there. Yeah, go ahead and throw that on there.
Okay. This.
Hello, Chris.
See, now you gotta Nice little rotation side to side.
So we have a pretty good amount of strength already with just those two beams sandwiched together. But I mean, if your car does this when you're driving down the road, you're not going to make it very far. So we need a way to hold everything else together. So that's where our third beam is going to come into play. And these are frictionless pins, which is nice. They don't introduce friction into the build. So there we go. So that would kind of work as our control arm. So super simple build. Boom. We got that all put together. So now we need some way to steer it. So if you were going to suspend this, you would use some of the shock absorbers or something like that. You could incorporate those into the build just using some perpendicular beams. But we're just going to make it super simple. So what we're going to do is we need a way to apply a force to the mechanism perpendicular to the beam. So we're just going to use one of these guys here, put a couple pins on. And the geometry in this build is not super important. It really just depends on what your application is and what you've got going on. And we're going to use a frictionless axle pin together. Something just like that. And then we'll use a little short beam. Use like a 5 beam, it'll be fine. So if everything is in line in your build, something like this is going to work. And just the action of turning this guy is going to get you the motion that you need. The thing that you're going to have to do a little bit differently is if this is suspended, meaning it's got movement independent from the body that would be resting above it, you're going to have movement in more than one direction. And the element that you're going to want to use is the ball. Let's see, do we have some of those?
Ball pin.
Yeah, so either a ball pin or a ball axle. So there's a ball pin. We can use the ball pin. That'll work. So we're going to switch it out for rather than using that part, we're going to do this just because we have this guy on hand. So we'd introduce that into our build. We'll throw a couple axle pins on that guy. 1 and 2.
Take this one off here.
Yep, that guy can come off. And then we'll introduce this guy here. And we'll introduce this guy here. So these guys here are very useful because they incorporate well with those ball joints. You can also use elements like these. These are a little bit more suitable for shocks and suspension and things like that. But either direction is going to work. So what you would do is you would apply this guy here with another ball pin on the end. And you can have that linked up with whatever it is that you're going to be turning your wheel with. So in this build here, super simple, but as you apply a force to the left or to the right, when everything's locked together, it's going to push and pull your wheels. So that's probably going to be like the simplest way that you could put together a quick and easy steering mechanism. All you're going to do above it when you're building is have an anchor point where you can introduce the torque as you're twisting. So having to go on up to a steering wheel or even a gear, that'd be really
Right. And basically
simple.
what you would do is have a gap in between. So say you got 2 beams up here, you would just have a gap here. So it could hold together like this essentially.
Yep, exactly. And there's also a version of that axle holder, that elastic piece, that's the ends are offset from each other 90 degrees, so it's got a twist in it. Those ones are really useful. I don't think we have any in our little building bucket that we got going on over here. But kind of give you a really easy representation of what you got going on. It might even be something as simple as you're going to attach, kind of in the similar way that we had it before. You're going to attach it straight up to a gear. And as you turn the gear, it's pushing and pulling. So you don't want to have it attached up here. This isn't going to help you because this is the stationary part. You need it to the back end.
You need the free bar.
Yep, exactly. And then it doesn't hurt if you need, or if your build is a little bit heavier, you can reinforce that as well.
But as long as the back one is what you're using for the steering mechanism.
Exactly.
Not the front. Because this is going to go behind the bumper and everything essentially.
Yeah, so something like this, you could do to get some even more rigidity. Say you had something that's got a lot of weight on it, and adding that. So I've got a lot of rigidity. It's not going to fall apart on me, and I can introduce my steering. And I've kind of built in my own buffer here, so it can't go, the steering, you want it to be somewhat realistic. You don't want to go too far where it's turning a whole 90 degrees perpendicular to
Right,
the
you want
axle.
just enough so you can make a nice turn.
Yep, exactly. So very easy, simple way. And then if we want to keep on going, we can even let's go ahead and introduce the force. So we'll take in a couple of parts here, and we'll introduce a little steering wheel mechanism to it. So I'm going to put myself an anchor point up here at the front, and I could use just a really simple little axle. And I need a way for this to kind of push and pull up against it. So what do you think we should use? You throw out your ideas. I know I put you on the spot. That's fun, isn't it? I like doing that.
So maybe we could do something like this, where it's a pin/axle right here holding it in. So it's connected in.
Okay, so now how do you get it to pivot?
All right. So,
So maybe we need to attack it a little bit differently, huh?
yeah.
Okay, so we've got, I like the parts usage that you've got going on here. The only thing is our pin is going to be sticking out the wrong direction.
Right.
So let's see if we have another joiner that's got the hole in the middle rather than on the side. And that might help us out a little bit more.
I know we just had one.
Here, we can use something just simple as this
Yeah.
guy.
I was looking for. Okay.
So maybe we have this guy hanging out over here. And we'll maybe even go that way. And
So then this axle rocks back in between.
so what we need to do is see how I've got this free so it can pivot. And that's important because look at my plane that I've got going on. Whenever the wheel goes this way or that way. So you need to have a little bit of motion in that direction as well. And then we could add in something a little bit simpler up here on the top. Oh, we need the other one. We need the perpendicular. Those ones. Let's see. Here. Yeah, that's not going to work.
No, we need the one where it's two axles and then.
Yeah, an axle and a hole. And that's going to be important for this setup because
There was a red one.
you got one here. I got this is totally not the right part, but it gives us the motion that we're needing. So I've now got my anchor point. I've got everything tied up there together. And when I introduce a force into the, hold on, this isn't gonna work. We need the double. There we go. Now that one will hold her all together. Really simple. And what I'm looking at here is this part, whenever the wheel goes one way, I'm gonna have an axle running through here, right? So I gotta make sure that I'm giving myself, if I put that right there, then my wheel, can it make its full range of motion? And yes, kind of stopping it a little bit. So what happens if I offset it one more time? We'll just go one further stud out. Now I've got my full range of motion. Everything's working good there.
So you want to do the same thing on the other side?
You don't
Or do you want to
necessarily,
eat it?
yeah, you don't have to. I mean, you could totally do that if that's something that you wanted to do, but not requirement in the way that we've got things set up
Right,
here.
because as long as there's just one stopper marking your line, I guess, of radius, it still counts.
Yep, exactly. So let's go super simple. Let's just literally use a beam. What do you think?
Okay.
Let's see what happens when we just use a straight up beam in our build here. So these are the little things that you're going to run into. So I've got this part here. This part has an axle running through it. And that's going to be a deterrent from our build because axles can't rotate. They're stuck. Whenever you have this here, that little plus sign, whatever you put into that is going to be stuck in that
Locks it
motion.
in place.
Yep, it's going to lock it in place. So I want to make sure I'm using an element like this that's got an option for rotation. Because if I go in and I could use this part right here, a short axle, but then this is going to be locked permanently and it can't rotate around that
So
axle.
this right here, this pin is our best option.
Yep, so that's going to be a much better fit for what we got going on. And then we're going to use another pin. We'll see if we got one here. This is the longer one, but it'll work for what we got going on. So now I've got to figure out what my spacing needs to be in between those two. Let's give that guy a shot. It might be a little bit long, but we can try it out. All right, I need a steering wheel. Give me a steering wheel. Let's use a gear. Okay, so my super simple build here, and I know I've got the ability to turn my wheels left and right by applying a torque to that axle. Now, in your build, if you're going to be doing something that's more complicated with suspension and things like that, you're going to run into some problems, but show you what I mean here. You're going to need some more specialized parts. So This guy here is holding this wheel hub. This is a little bit more of a special part, but it's got the ball joints, so it allows for the rotation in this degree of motion. And I'm using a really long, essentially like a worm gear type mechanism, these straight cut gears. So I can turn the wheels through the differential by applying force there. And I can also control my steering this way. And the majority of the parts on here are not for the movement, but more so for the structure. So I've got extra beams on the bottom side. I have everything held together. I've got some extra half beams in here because this is something that I would use like on a big truck. So the suspension would attach to this up here in this orientation. So I have the movement. But then my axle is solid. So as you can see, there is no bending in the axles, a little bit of flex in the parts, but it's not made to bend. Whereas if I was going to build like we've shown this off quite a bit. If I was going to build something like this doesn't have the steering incorporated into it. This would be the rear axle for the vehicle, but I still have my movement. And then I've got more of a live axle where there's actually movement through these CV joints in here so that the hub can move at a different angle to the differential. Kind of see how that works. And the other thing you would want to take note of is look at the length of this axle as I'm introducing the movement. These arms hold the hub completely parallel to my hub over here. But when I introduce the force, because I'm doing that, see how they're all staying in line? Everything stays together. But by doing that, I'm increasing and decreasing the length between the hub and the differential. So I have to have movement here. If I were to use two CV joints, that would not work out very well. So the part that allows you to do that is this type of CV joint right here. These are kind of invaluable when you're building vehicles with suspension. And the reason is that it does not have, it's got little grooves on the inside of it, but it does not hold the axle. It allows for about a half to a whole length of travel. And that's really important because notice here is it's coming in and out depending on the orientation. So if you were to go back and you were to use just two of these, you would constantly be pulling the axle in and out as you travel up and down because it needs a little bit of movement in there. You can get around that by building bigger, more complex creations where you're holding things together with lots of axles and things like that. But then you get a lot of parts. The more parts you got, the more weight you got. The more weight you have, the harder the motors are going to work.
Right.
And the slower your build's going to end up being. So
you got to equal it out essentially, like because you want it. If you're making something that's motorized, you want it to go kind of fast.
yeah.
But if it's pretty big in size, you're going to want the structure to be pretty sound. You want to make sure that things are held together. So say, you went off a ramp or something, it's not going to explode compact.
Exactly. So you want it to hold together. You don't want it to break under its own weight. And then you don't want to over-engineer it any more than you have to because you're using up more of your resources and it's going to take more effort to move that thing along. So just super simple if you want to kind of show off that a little bit. I mean, we took about 10 or 15 minutes just kind of understanding the principles of what we were trying to achieve, making sure we use the right parts. We didn't use friction where we shouldn't. There's no introduced friction. And then that's sturdy. I mean, we could probably put that on the ground and put, a 10-pound weight on it and roll it across the floor and it wouldn't crash.
Yeah, and I put this little bushing here just so this axle doesn't slide in and out that much. Just as something extra. It's not necessary depending on how far this axle is going in because, I mean, you really could just take this whole axle out, slide it back in. And then still turn it, but you might want to have something in between both of these. But again, this isn't the correct part for what we have here. We had the other part. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, they're black. That's the problem. They're all black parts. So I know we've got one on the table here somewhere, but it's blending in with the rest of them.
Nope, the same one.
Yeah, so there's two different versions of this element. So
this one works too, though, because with these two holes on the top here, you almost could do like a higher spacing up, and it'll still rotate, giving you some kind of other motion, but It's not really going to work that well.
Boom. There's one.
All right,
That's
there
what
we
were
go.
looking for.
So here's what we're going to do. So do this here. See, we're going to put this other pin here, lock that in, and now we got this whole motion here. So even though we were using this part here, this is the part you want where it's 2 axle pins and then the hole is going this way. So works really well.
Cool. All right. So we talked to, I'm going to show just a very simple way that I do a ratchet because we talked about that before, like on a drawbridge or something like that. So an element that I really like to use, it's not meant for it, but it works really great, is this little guy here. Where do you recognize that from? What are some of the themes that's been used in, David?
So I know power miners have used this a couple times. What's cool about this piece too, do you have a little bar, like a 4-length bar?
I don't think so. Not on the table.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna.
All right. While he grabs that, I'm going to show you how I use that when I'm putting together a ratcheting type mechanism. So say I have something that I want to be able to do a drawbridge and lift something up, but then I want it to stay in place until I want it to release. So I'm going to just really simple show you how I do that. And it all depends on the orientation of this, because as you notice, these have this curve to them and then the blunt edge on the end. So if I wanted rotation in this direction, it's easy, but then it won't allow it to go that way. However, if I had it kind of reverse that and I wanted the other direction to be the one that stuck in position, I would have to build it, well, not even like that, because now I have nowhere to work with. So I'd have to build it on the other end of the beam. So depending on the orientation of this part, it's going to make a big difference on what you're doing. So here, go ahead and show them what you're talking about.
So what's cool about this one is, yes, you could use it for technic builds. It works almost like a spaced out gear because the teeth here can almost click on another surface. So, it could stop itself, or if we have another one of these, then they can rotate through one another in opposite directions. Another cool thing about this is the way this is designed is you could take like a 4-length bar or maybe a spear, you can connect it through here, which gives you another way to utilize the strength, but also give you a different rotation style.
Yeah, so you're changing where the axle input is.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So that was one of the things I really like about this. Comes in quite a few colors. Orange is very well known for that piece.
So if we want to make a really quick ratchet, this, we would want to orient it in this direction. And we're going to go ahead and stick that, let's see, right through there. So a really easy way to do that is, say you had, like we were talking about, a drawbridge. That's something that you would apply your tension or your cable. This mechanism will allow it to spin in one way, but then it can't come undone until you remove this lever. So we were lifting a weight or something like that. This would give you that. You can use, if you don't have this guy here, you can use a gear. It's just their tendency to slip, especially on the smaller gears. So if you have a big old 40-tooth gear, that'll work a little bit better. If you only had a 24-tooth gear, that one would be a little bit tougher to use. But you could, instead of this part, use something like this. But you're going to have to introduce some more, a better way for that to kind of grab hold of with a half pin.
Yeah, I know I saw one here, the dark gray.
Yeah, I've got a couple on this other build. I may have used them all up. Let's see. Oh, there's one right there. So introducing just a one and a pin and a stud, so to speak, gives you a little bit more surface area to work with, and that's going to hold that down a little bit better. But if you apply too much, it's going to slip because those teeth are closer together. That's the benefit of using this part, is there's a lot of space in between, so you can really get a good
it's a wider shaped gear essentially. So even though it's not a traditional gear like we show here, the big one's a small one, this one is really good for that kind of concept because it locks in. Once it turns, it locks into the other part.
Yeah, so just really simple, kind of show them how that would work and put something here. So say I had a drawbridge action. It's going to allow it to freely go this direction, but then it stops it from turning back the other way. So as you can see, I'm applying some torque there, and I get some elastic in that axle. So it's holding it pretty good, but if I had too much weight going on, it's not going to work. But then I need to draw it up more. I can do that, and then it's going to stay. And then when I need it to release, I just release the tension on there, and now it spins freely in both directions. So some people were asking about that and kind of like what's a good way to do that. If you got the parts, this is plan A. If you don't have the part, plan 2. You can use this one right here. So
plan 2,
plan 2, A and 2. That's what I like.
A and 2.
Got to keep it a little bit weird. All right, so let's kind of show a couple of other little things. So last week we talked about our worm gear. We actually still have that one built, so we'll kind of show that one off here a little bit. We just built a quick little housing that's going to be able to amplify your torque. And the good thing about it is you can't spin this on its own. It's locked in place by that worm.
And this is where we introduce the idea with the chain. So I'll connect the chain here, wrap it around.
Yeah, and so I've got this that's pulling that up, and if I can't pull it back down until I pull it completely off, right? So that's the benefit of the worm gear and your 1 to 40 ratio. So the way that's put together,
to see it fly,
yeah,
on screen.
We get to see what you guys see, but it's on a little bit of a delay, so it's kind of fun. So what I wanted to show you real quickly is this worm gear type mechanism in a build where, say, you wanted to lift something or you needed some movement that stayed where you put it. So I just real quickly kind of mocked up this little guy, and I'm going to show you how to build it. We're going to tear it down completely to the basics and add it all back together. So I'm using a series of worm gears running along this axle here. And what I'm doing is I'm going to spin the worm gear, and I'm locking this mechanism from rotating because I have it with the axles here. So essentially what I've done now is I've created a little mechanism that as I spin it, it's going to contract and retract, going up and down. So I just wanted to show you the principle behind this and what we have going on and how it's all
You
put
could
together.
kind of connect the chain in that way too, and that way, if you got this braced up, you could pull it up, pull it down that way
So it's
too.
a thought kind of like maybe like a forklift or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't have a whole build and a body, so it may change our orientation of our gearing here and how we put it together. But I also, I have it geared up a little bit so it moves faster. So if you were trying to lift a lot of weight, you would want these two gears to be the other direction. So you're spinning the smaller gear against the larger gear, and then that'll give you some more torque on your build. But just kind of wanted to show you a quick way that you can do that. So I'm going to take a few parts off of here and kind of show you how that works. So this whole bottom part is just a way for me to spin the gear. It's not crucial to what we're doing. So I'm going to move all of that out of the way. So this is the basics of your mechanism. All I've got is some axles held together with a half beam, and then this is freely moving within that. So this guy right here, he can go up and down because I have an axle, but I also have a pinhole. So there's not any friction introduced in there. And then utilizing an axle on an axle is what holds everything in place because this cannot spin. Like if I turn the gear, the whole thing wants to move. But if I'm locking it in one direction when it moves and I give it the freedom, it can come up and down throughout the build. So all I'm going to use here is the little 3x5 half beam. I'm going to stack on, depending on how long you want to make it, you can make it all the way up to 32. So you can make something really long if you needed it to. So there's all our worm gears kind of stacked on top of each other. And I added a gear here because I needed some way to turn that center axle because that's what's acting on the mechanism. And then locking that all together, can't even push it down, see? So put this guy back up on the top. And now as I turn that gear clockwise and counterclockwise, notice how the worm gears are shifting, but this is locked in place. So it's rather than it just rotating around, it's going to go up and down.
Right, it's rotating through the two teeth that it's lined up with.
Mm-hmm. The worm gears, all of them have the axle running through them. So these ones are where you're going to want to apply you're forced to. So very simple mechanism. Say you're making, like I was thinking maybe like an F-22 where it's got those wings that retract.
Okay.
So you could have some anchor points here and you've got your wings. So whenever it's all the way forward or all the way back, your wings are swept back. And then as you change that angle of attack, it's going to push that direction. So it would push your wings out. So if you had some wings that were attached onto here, when it's all the way back, you just anchor it together. It would be in this way. And then as we move it all the way forward, it's going to push out on those wings. What do you think? I think that's a challenge. I think people could come up with an airplane that's got shiftable wings.
It'd be cool if they just made a jetpack. Maybe not a vehicle, but a jetpack concept.
Do like
where the wings open up.
Like a Technic fig size jetpack. That could
I think that'd be cool with the wings.
Yeah. And you would definitely want to use, because you're doing several points of movement, not only up and down, but in and out. You're definitely going to want to use
two of these hooked on essentially like this.
Yeah, let's throw something together real quick. Let's see. What do we got on this end? We got just that guy there. And then we've got a couple of points here. We'll just make it up real quick. Make it as we go. Noodling, as they say. So there we go. So now we got some anchor points there. And then we want this to orient itself converse to that. So we're going to rotate those around. And then now we need a way for this to spin on here, right?
Right.
So let's use, we'll use a single pin.
Right, because the idea is to have them like fold in and then go out.
Okay, so let's use a couple of these parts here. I pulled out too much black. It's going to be kind of hard to see on there. My apologies. Next time we will pull out some more light gray colors. All right, so we're going to use these guys here, and we're going to attach those onto our wings. Okay, so we want them to be able to move. So let's put them here. And then we need, we're going to have motion here. So we want to make sure that we put some axles that can rotate. So we're going to use our axle pins.
So you want it like
we'll put
pinned
those on
in
the bottom
essentially.
There. Yeah. So we'll have our one point here, and then our other point will be out
blue
there.
one or no, you need the one with no friction. Oh, that is not it.
There we go. Put that on there.
So put that on the first one lined up here. And then this one basically will just reach up.
Well, this is in the swept back position because we have the anchor point in the back.
Oh, right. So they're going to, okay. I see what we did.
Yeah. Actually, we need to offset this. That's where we're running into the problem, I think. We need the fulcrum to be a little bit further out. So we make this the end position. Actually, what we need is we need longer here. So we need to push these guys out. Let's use a longer beam. Yeah, that guy there. We'll put that out there.
So then are these fine the way they are here, or should it be out more?
Well, we just have to figure it out. We have to figure out what we want to look like. So when the wings are in the far upward position, so this way here, we want the wing to be as far out as possible. Or we need it to be all the way in. Which way?
Yeah, so...
Because look, as we move this direction, we're going to be pushing this out. It's going to pull the wings back in.
Okay.
So I think, somewhere in there. Attach it there.
So we need another piece on both of these.
No, there's enough. There should be enough movement in that joint there where we can just tilt it in. I'm going 3 studs away.
3 studs away. All right, you got it. Okay.
So let's play around with it and see what we like. So let's check our mechanism, make sure.
Oh, I see what happened. So
as we move this here, it's going to pull the wings further in. All right, so that's a little too close. Let's try it out a little bit further. We'll try 3 there. So just playing around with our geometry. So this would be our out position. And then as this moves along, it's going to start pulling in on that and changing the angle here. So if we have longer versions of this, or if we were to switch this out for beams, if we had more of the piece we only got one of on the table, we need a few more of these guys because we need to orient we need to attach to the beams here, but then we need an anchor point that's perpendicular to it. So we can do it that way. So very easy. And then this can hold a lot of weight because notice as I'm spinning, it's moving. But when I let go and quit spinning, it stays in the position that it's in.
utilize those.
Think about even like on a big crane truck, you could use something like this to be able to kind of anchor down into the ground. So let's even add some more distance here. So I'm going to release these guys.
Because even something like this too works because these are thinner, so they could slide in and out. Although these are different lengths.
Boom, boom, boom. So this is our furthest extended away from. So say if we wanted this to be the motion here, boom, we need to attach up here. Let's try that out. And then now as I decrease, see how the wing is going to be moving out? So that's a pretty good measurement right there. So let's go 3. What did I do? 3?
You said 3 past it, yeah.
3 past. So we'll put that back in there. Trying to do this all on camera is like a whole new level for me. I'm not used to this. I'm usually only building for my eyeballs to see. All right, so when we were going super fast, this would be our wing pattern, right? So our wings are swept back. If you can imagine that. We could zoom around, swooshable. And then say we're coming in for a landing, we needed everything to kind of go back to normal position. As we rotate, I wish there's a way to do that better. As we rotate this, the angle, is that good? Oop, it came out of socket there. So now the angle is coming further away. So I'm increasing the distance between the tips. They're coming further out. So that'd be a super simple way to incorporate that into your build. You could do something that way. And I think Lego has done it this way too. I have a red fighter jet Technic set that does something very similar.
Yeah, and then a lot of times what Lego has done too to incorporate that wing motion is they'll have like plates sliding in with one another.
Yeah, a little bit, but like I'm thinking of Benny's space jet. It has a mechanism that kind of does that.
I actually have a jet here we can show off.
Okay, let's take a look at it. So the thing with Benny's jet though, it's push and pull. So if you pull out the wings and you go swooshing around too much, it's gonna change dimensions on you. The other thing is like maybe you're building a forklift type mechanism, right? So you've got some arms that are coming out, and you want to lift some weight. So you could use a mechanism like this to do that. So take that guy there, and we'll add on a few more pieces there. Now I've got a couple of arms, and this is all stationary. I've got my axis running through there, and I need to lift something. So I can sweep underneath it, lift it up, and then it's going to stay in that position. I can put quite a bit of weight on that really easy, and it's going to be held together. And the cool thing is you can orient it this way. You can do it that way as well. Say you needed to grab and you wanted something to stay grabbed, you could utilize it in this direction. And as you put something here, it'll pinch onto that and it'll stay there. It's going to have the force. That's the beauty of the worm gear. It's holding that all there together.
Right. So what Lego does with brick is they have this whole slide motion here. So for those of you who recognize this awesome
Captain Rogers
jet here, this is actually a really cool set. So what they did is they have it where you got this long 1x8 1x8 tile in between. And so what will happen is if you push this in, this plate will push these wings out, which are connected to a little ratchet. So fold it down, you just push this in and see the wings fold it out. So you could do that concept with just simple Lego parts too.
Yeah, with this, what that allows you to do is like put it. Okay, so they're retracted. Now they're extended. So how do you retract them? You have to physically push.
Yeah, you'd have to physically push them.
Whereas the
Technic will do it for you because it'll pull it back.
Because it's in constant connection. Whereas this is only pushing against. It can't pull it back. So essentially, this is a ratchet.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
So it's just a cool little concept so you guys could see the differences between how you could do it with Lego if you're trying to make a plane or if you want it where they come back and forth, which you could do that with this. This would have to be a little bit bigger in order for you to put some other bricks or plates in to pull it back.
Very cool. All right. How we do it on time? We got about 20 minutes. All right. So let's spend a little bit of time. We'll kind of talk about here. Show off our little super simple dude over here.
Awesome. So this is how you could we made this so you could do 2 different speeds. So as you could see, these are a little bit of thicker gears. They're cut differently. So if you spin this gear is bigger than this little dark gray one. So it'll travel over this quicker. But then if you switch it, see that little dark gray gear? You can get way more motion in it because it's less surface area both gears are traveling over. Then you can just switch it. And you could see it on the build as I switch this axle back and forth as it lines up between the teeth. You could see. And then you could lock it, essentially, if you put these both in the middle. But, so now you got 2 different speeds. So you can, real fast. Let me see. Is this not going to work? Or you can lock it in and slow it down a little bit. So it's just something really simple you could do. You could use this build right here for quite a few things. You can make a vehicle for, you can make a lifting system, a pull system. Either way, it'll allow you to control 2 different speeds, 2 different ways of strength. You know, if you really don't want anything, if you just want to make it like a trap door or something, you could use this kind of concept. So really fun.
Kind of, you can feel that if you build that at home, guys, you'll be able to feel the difference. Like David was playing around with it earlier. It's like, oh, you can really feel that. Like when I do this is really easy, but when I put it here, it takes more effort. To spin it around.
And like I said, that's because that little small gear, the dark bluish gray one, is so small. There's like no surface area you have to travel around.
Yeah, so that's like super easy. And then the reverse is the same as well. So if I'm going to use this as my input, when I spin this versus when I spin this, I can feel the difference in how much effort it takes me to spin that axle.
Right. You're almost getting a little bit more of a rotation in that gear to travel at least partially the way.
You got to go further, right? So depending on which one's your input, which one's your output. So that was our super simple 2-speed
transmission.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you a build that I learned from another builder. And like I said, fearlessly take what you need to do what you want to do. And I'm going to show you a super simple way to incorporate this changeover along with these axles that have the clutch in them. So we talked a little bit about it last week, but I wanted to show you how that all fits together. And I'm actually going to take this one apart to show you how it works. I know. Hopefully I remember how to do it. Perfect. All right. So this is just a reinforced housing for the entire build. But if you don't have enough of these parts, never fear. You can use something just as simple as a bunch of lift arms. So we're going to kind of rebuild this. Yeah, you need 1 more degree because if you use the straight ones, the problem is when you go to rigidity because you need something else to stop it from pivoting.
So yeah, almost like this, but longer, where it's got at least 1 out. But that's why you got this. So it's 5 and 3.
5 and 3. So we're going to rebuild this transmission. I'm going to tell you how it works as we go along with it. So it incorporates the older version, just because I have more of the older ones. I have more older sets than newer sets. And it's the same piece. It functions the same. The difference is the old one is 2 long and the new one is 3 long. So that's the major difference between the two. But we can use it very much the same way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the housing and everything together and show you how it works. So my changeover gears, don't need that. We'll just use all the old parts. We'll use all the old gray. So having it put together in this fashion, what it allows me to do is select which gear is active. So if I move the changeover here, then it's going to engage this gear because now it's locked in. Whereas right now, they're both free to spin. When I push this over, now it's locked in and it won't spin unless I apply the force to it. So that simple principle, along with some other gearing, is going to allow us to put everything together. So what I'm going to do is I've just got some axles running through, and I'm going to put one on the top. This one's going to be a little bit fragile as we build it, but you'll see what I got going on. And then I'm going to build another one on the other side. Could I have some 7 long beams?
7.
Yeah. I'm gonna
1 or 2?
Let's just start with 1. And because I'm going to need something. Otherwise, it's going to completely fall apart as I'm building it.
Right, because there's no connection point.
No connection points is going to be a problem. So we'll just do it super simple. So my basing, remember we talked about evens and odds. Technic is going to be an odd. So we're going to have everything essentially 3 poles apart from each other.
Like
3
3 to
studs
1.
apart. Yep. So here's my beginning of my super simple housing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed one of my changeover gears on this side and the other changeover on the other side. And now I've got that guy all put together. And then I'm going to, so you can decide which one you want to be, but I want this one to be my first gear. And first gear is going to have the smallest gear that I'm going to use. So the ratios that we're going to use are kind of 3 to 1, 1.6 to 1, and then we're going to multiply that out by 5 to 1 and 1 to 1, which is great. So that way we can get the maximum speed, but if we're going up a hill or something, we get maximum torque. So I'm going to apply my smallest gear here on this guy, and then I'm going to marry him up on the other side with the easy little 3 to 1. We talked about that last week in simple gear ratio. All right, so whenever I don't have a gear selected, I'm able to spin. When I have this guy selected, one at a time, I still have motion. So right now I'm in my lowest gear, and then when I'm done with my build, this will be my highest gear. Boom. All right, so we're gonna build another frame on the other side, just so we have somewhere to anchor everything. So just take these guys, put them apart from each other, get some pins, 1, 2.
How many more you need?
2 more, and 1 more of these guys here. So we need a couple more. Boom, boom. Just making the exact same thing we did on the other side. There we go. So now we got our other side of the mechanism here. All right, so what we built here is kind of half a transmission. We have this, when we have it in this position, it'll work, we'll get rotation. And then when we put the other side in, we'll have rotation as well. But the problem is, whenever we select the other gears, they're not engaged to anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to put those guys together with just a super simple set of axles. And I've got these 1 to 1 ratio because these are 16 and these are 16. So everything here is going to be 1 to 1.
One pass over to another.
Everything's going to be the same there. So what I'm going to do is alternate. So when it's built in, here, we'll take it down. So I want it to engage on the rotation. I wanted to engage this axle on this side and this axle group on that side. And actually, we're going to do it, we need to do it the other orientation. Actually, no, we can fix this. Will this come out? Oh, there we go. We have a little bit more. Perfect. So we're going to push that there and push that there because I need some more room on the back side. Okay. So we put our housing back together. Everything slides in there. So now I have, when I turn this guy up here, it's independent from here. So nothing up at the top, the gears aren't spinning. So they're independent of each other. This is a solid axle. So when I spin the top, it's going to spin those gears. But there's nothing going on down here, which is good. So what we're going to do now is opposite of what we did at the top. So we have our small gear on this side, large gear on this side. We're going to go the other direction on the bottom. We're going to use these guys. If you use the exact same gears, you end up mirroring your ratios. So you're going to get the same ratios out of the bottom. But by using 2 different gears, a 16 and a 20 gives us some different ones. So not on the top set of axles, but on the bottom set of axles. And I'm actually need to turn this the other way. There we go. Now we got some room. I'm going to put them opposite to what I did on the top. And you guys have just built a 4-speed manual transmission. I know it doesn't look like it yet, but it is. So here's what happens. This is going to be my input shaft. Let's put a black because we have a lot of black on the table, as we said. So we're going to put a black one there. Do we have another color of the axle joiner? Here, we'll just use this guy. This one is going to be my output. So kind of catty corner to what I got going on. And as I'm spinning, they're independent of each other. But when I select a gear, I put this into first gear. Now I've got rotation. And whoop, we haven't attached everything yet. Keep forgetting that. All right, so now I'm going to shift gears again. And only one gear can be engaged at a time. If you have both of them, then it's locking these ratios. And kind of like in our other transmission, it's not going to work. So we'll put that back there. Now we got this gear. And now it's not spinning quite as fast. And then here is my lowest gear. So this is going to give me essentially 5 to 1 because it's running through the biggest ratio possible to get to the
Yeah,
output.
I think you'll have to change it up a little bit because your hands are kind of like
Okay,
covering
yeah.
the motion. So you can see how they rotate here. And then he says, if you switch this one here, then
Oh, you got 2 gears engaged. Won't work
Yep,
when both
nope.
are engaged. You got to pick one or the other. Oh, now you got 2 gears engaged. Right in the middle. There you go.
right there. There we go. So you got to move it just a little bit so you guys can see how it rotates. Switch it. And then see, and if you don't switch them right, like he said, they'll lock up. So now I can't like really turn them because you'll hear that
You can only be in 1 gear at a time.
skipping. So you got to move it over. And now you got all this rotating.
And you could change it up. Say you had a left-hand driver versus a right-hand driver. You could change these around. So you could put them on different axles. And by doing that, you're changing which gear is high and which gear is low because you're going to reorient everything. So if you needed to, you could put that way, and then you could switch the bottom gears, and that'll give you your other input. So if you need this to be the input and that the output, you would just mirror everything around the other direction. So pretty simple transmission. It doesn't use too many specialized parts, just the changeover gears and the clutch gears. And the good thing is when you buy a fairly large Technic set that incorporates that, they usually give you 6 or 8 of those. Because the other purpose that they use those gears for is, say you have you have motion running through an axle, but then you have 2 axles next to it that are providing motion in a different direction. So you'll see this quite a bit in regular Lego Technic sets. Oop, I'm off one hole. There we go. So you would see something like that guy, and then they would have this. So say this was, your steering mechanism, and it also, you needed to run your power for your motors through that same.
Showing one last little build.
Yeah, just kind of why that part is a good thing to have in your collection. So when I apply force here, notice the center axle is not rotating. So say I needed this one to be the motor, but I needed to get around it for my steering. You could use a simple place like that. So you get quite a few of these gears used in non-transmission type uses because it does not have a axle through the middle. So you'll see a lot of things like this, and it's very helpful when you're trying to compact something down and you need to get 2 axes of motion through one thing. So right now I've lined everything up where this can be my drive and this can be my steering. Everything's there put together. So just a couple of things went through over the last hour. Oh yeah, and then you were probably asking, what is this part? This is the changeover gear that came out in the newer pieces, and what it does is it's got this ellipses running around it, and when it's locked in place, depending on the orientation, it will move the gear up.
It'll help switch it for you.
Yeah, it switches it for you. So that's kind of how you get that manual, or not manual, but that automatic. So you could, boom, pop out of gear, boom, pop into gear because of the ridges.
So every
that run
few
along it.
rotations, it switches.
Yeah, I'm hoping this part becomes more readily available because it's only in a couple of expensive sets. So it's like a $3 or $4 part, depending on where you're getting it from. But this guy, super handy, really good. Well, we went through a lot of stuff today. Went through a simple steering mechanism.
Right.
We got to show off the ratcheting mechanism. Spent a little bit of time on that. And then we did our worm gear so they could see.
Reminder.
We've almost completely disassembled our mechanism that we made for that one.
Right, and then we also showed off
the motion.
We also showed off the 2-speed
and the 4-speed.
So now you guys could see how all this works in different ways. And these are all our different builds, as you could see. And you can go back to these videos as we progress, and you can just kind of do a recap of like what we've built and talked about, and you could see the differences, and that way you could be like, oh, I want to do that right there. This one on the left, that one in the middle.
Yep. Just fast forward to where you're at in your build and be like, all right, so how do I get that motion? How do I get that to move in the way that they did on the video? And you guys can kind of come up with that. So next time you're able to kind of go through your parts bin, take a look at what you got, and see what you can come up with. I'm really excited to see what everybody kind of does in their own mocks and creations. So we appreciate the feedback, whether it be through a message or a text, or maybe even submit a video of what you've got going on. The next time that we get together, I want to offer up our services to help you out with whatever build that you may have going on in your lot. If you're running into any type of an issue and you say, hey, I think this would be really cool to do, but I'm not sure what parts I would need to do it or how to put it together. We want to hear from you. So give us some advance notice, maybe over the weekend. Take a picture of it. Give us a little line about what you got going on. Send it into Bricks and Minifigs, and we'll take a look at doing that on our next build next week. So appreciate you being here with me, David.
Yeah, this has been really awesome. I'm glad we're still continuing this, and seems like we're going to be doing more once the competition ends and we just do little stream videos to kind of put some bigger stuff together to give people like a little bit more of like, oh, you know what? I want to spend more time in this. I want to learn how to do that.
I think it'd be kind of fun too. One of the things I like doing is taking a kind of a common set and then motorizing it. So showing you kind of how to put that together. Maybe we'll pick up something off the shelf that's somewhat built, and we'll tear it down a little bit to incorporate a motor and put it all back together. Show people how to do that.
Yeah.
And then get some of the other electronics, maybe even show them how the Control Plus works. We'll bring in the Lieberman and give them like a tutorial on what's going on with those parts and how the new electronics help them out. So
yeah, we could do that. We could do that way later on. Like right away would be too overwhelming, but if we did it later on, I think that's a good idea.
We'll keep building on these principles. So if you got something that you're working on, let us know. If there is a problem or an issue that you're coming across, or there's something that you want us to spend some time on, we're open to suggestions. So let us know. But other than that, appreciate you spending your afternoon with us in this time. And we will be back on Tuesday at what time are we doing? 1:30. We're going to do a little bit longer next week, so it gives us a little bit more time to answer some build questions and try to figure it out. So give me some homework. David needs the homework. He hasn't been to school in a while. We need to school him a little bit. That'll be good for him.
It's cute. I like that.
But other than that, guys, enjoy the rest of your day and keep on building. We'll talk to you later.
Bye, guys.